So this year I championed a lot of pieces of legislation. I think I was carrying a total of 16 different bills. They
16?
ranged from economic development. I think I had 2 or 3 bills on economic development. I was carrying some bills that were for a statewide spay neuter dog and cat program, which I will go through that maybe a little bit later. I also had some on domestic violence issues with dealing with people that have violated orders of protection to help protect the victims and help them feel more safe and secure.
Would that have been
in the state.
House Bill 268?
Yeah, yes, that would have been House Bill 268. And so a lot of pieces of legislation that I carried were all over the map. One of them was actually amending the Motor Vehicle Act to allow for 3-wheel vehicles to be on our roads. These are vehicles that get extremely good gas mileage for a lot of the constituents that are in my district. We commute long distances and to make sure they have affordable transportation. And these are called autocycles. These vehicles are completely encased in a roll cage. They have airbags, 3 to 5 airbags in each vehicle. They seat 2 people. They're operated with a steering wheel, a pedal, a brake, just like a car. They have air conditioning, they have heating, they have radio. They have the glass all the way around, completely enclosed, and the glass is the same standards that you see in your normal vehicles that are on the road, same safety requirements. And these vehicles get 88 miles to the gallon, so you can imagine the savings on gasoline. And furthermore, what these vehicles, they cost, if you buy a standard vehicle, they're $6,800, $6,800. And if you buy it in automatic, they're $7,800. So we can imagine that we have a lot of individuals that are commuting to work, and just the idea of sometimes people are affording a used vehicle, and sometimes these used vehicles aren't very dependable. So the idea that now you can have a new vehicle with a 50,000 mile warranty with airbags, radio, heating for $6,800 is pretty incredible. And so that bill did pass all the way through the House and the Senate, and it's on the way up to the governor for signature. House Bill 204. Currently, as we all know here in this state, we have a huge issue with DWI problem with our DWIs. And what this bill did is currently we collect about $45 million in excise tax from liquor sales. The problem is that only 41% of those dollars go to DWI programs to help with prevention and education, especially with our youth.
Why such a small percentage?
Well, because the general fund or the legislators had decided to raid that fund and use it for other means. And so my belief is, if we're here with good government, if we're collecting a tax for a particular purpose, we should be putting that money to help fight. As we know, alcohol, it can create a lot of problems. So those problems that are created, the idea was to collect this tax and help put them to mitigate these problems. And unfortunately, over the course of years, only 41% goes to these type of programs. So the House Bill 204, what it did is it took an additional 5%, which equates to about $3 million per year, is now going to be going to our DWI grant programs. And these are statewide. They're run by each county, and they're aimed at prevention and education mainly, because if you can teach the next generation as far as how dangerous this is and how it affects families, then you start to get a change. One of the other bills that did get through and is on the way to the governor for signature was a bill that took a tremendous amount of time to work on, and this bill was to create a sunshine portal for whenever we go visit a hospital, if we want to determine what are the costs for common procedures and what are the quality matrix for those procedures. This piece of legislation is it charged the Department of Health to set up a website by 2018. And what it did is it created an advisory committee made up of doctors, a few hospital representatives, a couple of representatives from the Department of Health, and most importantly, 2 to 3 consumers, advocates, you and I. to make sure that what they were going to do now is they're going to collect data on cost and quality. So this means readmission rates, infectious rates, whatever other component there is for quality. And the idea is to come up with a matrix that we can put on a website that's a sunshine portal, so you and I can go to it at any point. Well, the one I was speaking about earlier was House Bill 268, and what this was is this was actually about 6 months before the session started. I had a constituent that came to me, and this constituent had grown up in the Valley and had a boyfriend in the Valley, and when she was ready to go to school, this boyfriend tended to be very abusive and didn't want the separation, and it seemed like there was a lot of intimidation, and sounded like it got to a point where she actually had gotten hurt. And so what we decided to do is try and help victims like her. And so what we looked at is we looked around at other states to see what was being done, and what we found is that there is something called, I think it's called Crystal's bracelet, or it was called some other bracelet. And what it did, this law, is that those people, and usually it arose from domestic violence issues, but those people that had an order of protection against them and now have violated it, under current law, on that second violation, when you got taken to the judge would have two choices under current law, and that's to fine that individual or to incarcerate them, to put them in jail. And so what this bill did is it gave another tool in the toolbox. And what it did is it set up exclusion zones. So the exclusion zones for the victim would be their house, would be their school, would be their place of employment, or their children's school. And what it would do is if the offender could afford to pay it, the judge could order that offender to get an ankle bracelet on. And that ankle bracelet would be monitored 24/7 to make sure this offender didn't go into the victim's exclusion zones. And if they did, there would be a phone call or a text message sent to the victim's phone to let them know that the offender was near, because usually that's when people get killed in these types of incidents. That is the main objective for us to go to the legislature to get completed. We don't operate without a state budget in our Constitution. And every even year we go for a 30-day session with the primary focus just to get the budget out. And so I was very relieved that we got this budget out. In any budget, we're not always going to be in 100% agreement with all parties or even individual members. But the idea is that there's compromise, and the idea is that there's a budget that went out. I think I'm extremely happy about that, and I think it was a good budget. It was a little bit different. First of all, the Republicans took control of the House, so that was slightly different. We lost all our committee chairs that had been there, at least for me, the prior two sessions. They were all new committee chairs. They did restructure the way it worked inside, but I guess what was different for me were two different things. One thing was that I was carrying a lot of bills, and I was extremely busy. There was a lot of success with the bills. They made it through the House. I think there was at least 8 or 9 bills that made it through the House that went on to the Senate. And so I was busy chasing bills. I shouldn't say chasing, but actively working bills to get them passed. So that was one big change. Another change is because when you get a swap of parties like we did see after 60 years, you can imagine there's legislation that had never hit the floor before in 60 years that now hit the floor. And so there was a lot of long debates on legislation, and it was long hours, and in the end, I don't think much was accomplished out of it. First of all, I have 4 sons. A lot of people look at me and they either think that maybe I don't have any children or I have one young one, but I do have 4 sons, and they range in age. They range in age from 6 years of age all the way to 29 years of age. And it seems like whenever I mention that to any of my constituents or anybody at the Roundhouse, they seem to be very shocked at that. But they're all boys, they're all doing well. Only one of them lives out of state because he didn't find any opportunity for him here. He's an engineer out in Colorado. And my youngest one, that's 6 years old, is, we're raising, my beautiful wife and I are raising him there at home, and it's
And home is in Nambe.
home is in Nambe, yes, a beautiful place in Nambe. It's a place where actually all three other boys were raised in Nambe as well, in the same house that we live in now.
All right, well, thank you very much. We appreciate you taking the time. Representative Carl Trujillo, representing district number
46.
46.
Yes, and
Is northern Santa Fe County, Nambe, Powake, all the way up to right against the Rio Riba.
all the way up to, actually, it's an interesting district because it's the northern part of the city of Santa Fe. So Cerrillos Road is the southern boundary in Santa Fe between the train station and Siler Road.
Okay.
And then it moves all the way up north, all the way up near the Espanola High School. So
So
parts
you're
of
actually
McCurdy
taking
Road and
part of the city of Espanola as well.
absolutely, yes. That's one other thing that most people don't know is that the county of Santa Fe is part of, in the city limits of Espanola. And so I
Yes.
represent all of that area as well.
Or a good district.
Yes, absolutely, very good district.
All right, well, thank you very much.